Yeah, man. let's kill that bass head. Alright, let's do this. I'm on the air, we got this podcast flow. It's me and Tony on the mics, we gotta let you know of current events, little gaming, sprinkle in some entertainment. We stay humble, but our moms still think we're famous. Turn up the bass and baby, maybe let that magic flow. Our spoken word is all the things you really wanna know. Having a good time on the show, T-Bows and Matty G. Tune in and hit subscribe and join us on the FAQ.
Welcome everybody to the Freaking Awesome Podcast. I am your host Anthony Bowes, and as you can see, Ned sitting next to me is not Matty G, but we are actually in luck because today's guest is not only by rights his own host, but he is also of course has his own show, and we're trying to work through a couple technical issues there. So I won't go any further, but we will let you know that here is today's host, co-host and guest, Mickey Burns. Mickey, thank you for joining us today.
Anthony, it's my pleasure. Haven't been to Ontario in quite some time, but thank you for having me on your show.
Well, the honor's all mine, actually. It's so interesting because you have hosted yourself from your own show profiles, and you've had so many celebrities of over the spanning all the years, and it's kind of weird to I guess to see someone who's normally hosting as a guest himself. So
yeah, I've had a long ride doing it over about almost 25 years.
So yeah, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we just did 500 episodes on profiles, and I just released my second book, which is Inside Celebrity Profiles, and it's a coffee table book, and we can talk about that later.
Wonderful. So to start off here, we got a little humorous news article to talk about. It came across today, and this. So what we always love about the U.S., of course, is some of the amazing things that come out of it. And of course, Florida is normally the best place to get a lot of our news, as I'm sure it is for all of you. But today actually was kind of a humorous little thing that came out of Michigan. So what happened was a librarian who was in the lower storage area, of course, had come across a spider to find out there was 3 spiders, and the immediate response was to close down the library. and in that moment, they ended up having a group come through, do a lot of fumigation, make sure everything was good. What I thought was the funniest thing out of the whole article was, you're in a room full of books, and not one person thought about just taking a book and smushing the spider.
Guess they're not used to spiders in Michigan.
Oh, it's all around here.
I'm sure those old books made nice homes for spiders.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of spiders, of course, really prefer that kind of dark, dank areas. So I would imagine a library would be perfect for that.
Perfect space. I'm surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always funny how a tiny little thing in nature can really put us on the spectrum of like how frail or feeble we can really be.
Sure, and some people will do anything to get out of work for half a day,
It's true. It's true. I remember seeing so many people, when you're in school, people pull the fire alarm, and when you're at work, you might call in sick and, take that mental health day. But for a spider, that's a new one.
Sure. Why not? If it's there, use it, and they did. They were
exactly.
Probably disappointed that the fumigation happened so quickly.
Yeah, I think, I don't think they got it all in one day. By the sounds of the article, it was later that week. So not only did they get one day off, but they actually got, I think, at least a minimum 2 days off just for 3 little spiders.
Get a lot of spiders in New York during the winter, but in the summertime, forget it. They're everywhere.
Yeah. Kingston's really bad because we're a limestone city. Apparently, spiders are attracted to the limestone. So right along the waterfront, if you're sitting on the rocks, you hear this weird, almost like a bubbly sound. And then when you look down, there's thousands and thousands of spiders all on the rocks around you.
Boy, and I went to college in Missouri, and I remember them being concerned about one particular spider, and it was called the Brown Recluse, because they can make you very sick.
Yes, the funny thing about the recluse is, it's not super poisonous, but it does have kind of like some damaging effects where you can be violently ill for a little bit.
To know what it was, so if you saw one, you stayed away from it.
Yeah, and apparently these spiders were Mediterranean recluses.
Okay.
So, but I mean, it wasn't like it was a black widow or anything.
That's a great story, though.
Yeah. So, and normally we would have a few articles, but, as having you on the show and a lot of the history that you've had with so many other celebrities, clearly we're going to have a lot of questions or have a lot of questions and things to talk to you about. But the first thing that came to my mind is, in all the time of you doing this, what is the most ridiculous outfit a guest has had?
Well, I always wear a suit and a tie, have from day one. But like Billy Ray Cyrus, Miley's father, he came with a t-shirt, dungarees, and a cowboy hat. But that's normal for him, right? Barry came in with a t-shirt, looked like he didn't wash it in 3 weeks. Within a period, but Deepak Chopra came in with a pair of Firehouse red sneakers, but other than the accessories, most of them come casual. I don't think I've...
Good. So, you don't have the average actor showing up and wearing like a banana suit or something.
No, not even the comedians.
You'd expect it for someone like Billy Crystal.
Yeah, most of them, to be honest, they dress very casual. And I'm trying to think back. I can't remember one of them, a male, ever wearing a suit.
That's strange.
They all come very casual.
Well, that's good. I mean, it always sets a nice tone if things are casual for your guests. And I'm glad that you've been able to wear something casual.
Now, the women, on the other hand, I can say they always try to dress really, really nice and wear their best outfits, and their hair is always done. So they're different from the male guests. Joan Rivers always looked impeccable. Many of the actresses I've had, impeccable, and I usually compliment Tia Carrera. I said she came like she was doing a movie. So women, they always want to be looking their best. They don't ever want to be caught off guard.
It goes to say something for men in the Hollywood industry, I guess. If you feel so comfortable wherever you go to be relaxed, and women will always shoot for the stars and are always a class act when they show up.
I never thought about that until you, Anthony, just mentioned it. I never even dawned on me of the difference between the male guest and the female guest. But it's quite extraordinary, actually.
It is always really interesting, and you've had such a spectrum of guests over the years that it's always quite interesting. Like you had mentioned, Joan Rivers, always a class act. And remember, whatever she did, she was always glamorous,
always impeccable from her nails to her hair to her outfit, impeccable. Yep, no question.
Yeah, definitely.
I like Joan because she was
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying I like Joan. She was really smart, funny, but really intelligent. I liked her wit, but I also respected her intelligence level.
She was really brilliant, and it really showed a lot in her comedy because it was very smart comedy. Yep. Like it wasn't, today you find a lot of stuff.
She was brilliant.
Yeah, she really was. So over the past years, you, of course, have seen so many guests. And I guess the biggest thing, and I had caught a bit of, a couple excerpts from your book, and you were mentioning how you started off actually kind of in the sports. You were on a football and a baseball scholarship.
Yeah, both of them. So I played both, football in the fall and winter, and spring baseball. And I did that for my 4 years in college. But it was the athletics that got me to college in the first place. Because I played both. And had it not been for that scholarship, my parents, my father was a city bus driver in New York City after World War II. My mother was a homemaker. Wow. And no one, when I was growing up, had any money. Not like today, you had enough money to pay the rent and hope you had a few dollars left over at the end of the month, if you were lucky. But having enough money to send me to college, my mother used to say, "I'd love for you to go to college, but you're going to have to figure out a way to get a scholarship." And I did,
Yeah.
Changed my life.
And
that scholarship was godsend.
It's not often that you see scholarships so much in the Canadian area. I mean, you do have it is out there, and you obviously have to be quite high in education. You don't find a lot of scholarships, especially for athleticism, up here. And I know it was something that was rather popular in the US.
Unless you play hockey.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, hockey is of course our old home sport, so we do excel at that.
Yes, you do.
Not me. Not me. I'm one of those guys that I love hockey. I love skating. I've got enough to kind of keep the momentum going, but I don't stop very well. So I'm definitely not the person to teach skating to my kids.
And I remember, even when I got my scholarship, I remember the first day of school in Missouri. I'm from New York. I went to Missouri. We had all the freshmen gather in the auditorium, and the speaker said, "Look to your left and look to your right. In 4 years, only one of you will remain."
Wow.
I said to myself, well, that's definitely going to be me, because there's no way that I'm not going to take advantage of this scholarship and finish, and I did. But when I heard that, I said, there's no way I'm not going to make this, because it was such an opportunity. I was the first person in my family to go to college. Then I'm going to share this with you. After that, he said,
right,
because you're going to love this, and you can use this in the future, Anthony. The next thing the speaker said, he said, "You're all here for degrees, and I'm sure you all know what they stand for." And I had no idea. I'm just fortunate that I'm in college. He said, "Well, let me tell you." He said, "A BS," and that's what I was shooting for, a BS, is bullshit. He said, "Then you'll go for an MS, and that's more shit." And he said, "Really aggressive, you'll try to get a PhD, which stands for piled higher and deeper." And that was my freshman year, my first day in school. That's what I learned.
Well, it's really funny. I remember when I was going through all my student loans and everything, and I thought it was very interesting that the moment you finish your education, the loan centers are all over you instantly. Like you just got out of the education, you haven't even really found that job yet, and they're there. They want the money back right away.
I ask how much in loans you piled up. I'm just curious.
Well, I'm loan free now.
Yeah, when you first got out.
Oh, when I first got out, I think I was actually quite fortunate. I was only the first time around. I think it was only about 14,000 in debt, which wasn't bad.
Wow. Okay, that's not. I mean, people pay 40,000-50,000 today.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I got out without any loans. But as I said,
well,
I was lucky. So when I got my first,
with a scholarship. Yeah. So what I was going to mention was I was really interesting because I was sitting in a room and I was talking with someone, and they were kind of like a guidance person to just say, listen, this is how we got to deal with the loans. Yes, they're all over you, but we'll kind of work something out. But they had mentioned the irony was anybody who got like their doctorate in Canada or was a lawyer
Yeah.
didn't have to pay back their loans. Because what would happen is later on, they're like the school, their alma mater would want a donation back from them. So once they're established, they ended up paying money back, and then never had to pay their student loans, and they had the worst of all the loans.
Wow. Well, before we get off of this topic, I was lucky when I was going to school in Missouri. After 4 years, I established residency. And back in those days, if you were a resident of the state, you didn't even pay tuition to go to graduate school. So I went to graduate school, tuition free. And I remember I had to borrow enough money for meals from the year I was going for my master's. So I borrowed $1,200, which got me through the year. And then when I finished, the first job I had out of college was teaching. But it was a national defense loan. So if you were a teacher, you only had to pay back half. So I did have a loan. I had $100 I had to pay back, to be accurate.
That's fantastic. Wow, that's amazing.
Good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, education aside and everything, you've done really well. You've made quite a name for yourself. And I guess when you got into the business, I know you were working with multiple kind of stations, and you were quite sought after. But what was that moment where, it was like the biggest break for you?
I think the biggest break was getting a job at Fox Television in New York City. And I got it by accident. Guys that I played golf with worked at Fox as cameramen and editors. And one day they said to me, because they knew I wanted to be in broadcasting my whole life, And said, one of my partners said, we're playing golf. They said, my partner is going on vacation. Do you want to see if I can get you in as a sound man? And I said, that'd be great. So I went in, I worked as a sound man for the 10 o'clock news, with the lavaliers and the boom mic and on the news crews. But that was opened up my entire career because shortly after that, Rupert Murdoch took over Fox. And the first cut out overtime. So guys who were, they couldn't afford to pay their bills. They had been making $60,000 a year for being whatever their job was, but they made $60,000 in overtime.
Wow.
So when Rupert came in and cut it out, we had to figure a way out to supplement that overtime we weren't getting anymore. So we moonlighted aside, and we ended up getting a contract with Time Warner to do a news magazine because we had a lot of connections in the business by that time. And I was that's how I first got in front of the camera. And then because Time Warner really liked that news magazine, they hired me to host another show for them, which was like a local Larry King Live. And then the opportunities came one after another kind of thing. But if it wasn't for that opportunity to get through the door at Fox in New York City, I don't know if I ever would have had a broadcasting career.
Well, the entertainment industry wasn't something new to you because I believe before that even began, you were the front man of your own band.
Yeah, well, that's how I got into Fox, because I was the front man of my own band. I love music and I love doing that. And it was my knowledge of sound equipment, right, for the band that enabled me to get to be a sound man at Fox. We started with sound equipment. It was that. But I used to love the band. I mean, we like everyone else back in the 70s, we were trying to get a hit record, right?
Yes.
And we had a great band. And one night we were playing Dangerfields in Rodney's club in Manhattan.
Yep.
They were all the time. That's how he would try out his new material. So it would be Rodney, and then my band, and then Rodney and my band, or they would have other major comics. So you'd have a comic act, a band, comic act, musical act. One night after we performed, as we're trying to get a hit record at the same time, a couple came up to us and said, "Hey, you guys are great. Would you like to play at our wedding?" And I presented it to the band, and they said, "We're not a wedding band. You know, we're big stars. We're looking for a hit record." So then I looked into how much the people who play weddings make. And
of course, yeah.
I said, you know, the average wedding band in New York makes $5,000 a wedding. And that was back then, you know. And
yeah, that's a lot back then.
Yeah, and we were playing Dangerfields for $50 a piece a night.
Oh, gee.
So they said, okay, well, let's look into this wedding thing. So then we went into weddings, and we became one of the more popular wedding bands in the New York tri-state area. In 1 year, I think it was one of the years in late 80s, I did 100 weddings in 1 year.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we used to go on a Saturday, we had a 1 o'clock wedding and like a 7 at night, you know, or 8 at night. And we actually had roadies. So after we finished the first wedding, they would break down the equipment and head for the second location. And we do the same thing on like Saturday, Sunday. We would do 5 weddings in a weekend.
Wow, that is crazy. I don't even know how you would fit all those in. Like you'd be working back to back.
Yes. Yo, we worked our butts off. And then in the 90s, right at the beginning of the 90s, DJs started to take over.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're getting $7,000-$8,000 a wedding. And the disc jockeys were charging $500.
Oh, jeez.
So they really knocked the bands right out of the box. So at the same time, I was working at Fox, and I was also doing that. So I was kind of glad to give the music up and at around 1990, devote full time to broadcasting. I had my run. I enjoyed it, and I was now looking to get into broadcasting full time.
So of all that, though, what was your band's name?
Well, it was Mickey Burns Orchestra.
Oh, so not only did you take the front man position, but you took the whole name of the band and everything.
I had all the responsibility. You know,
fair.
You know, in a wedding, that's a big deal. You know, you can make or break a wedding if you don't do it right. And I remember, and you have to work with the bride and groom on their first dance. You have to introduce the wedding party. You have to know what songs to play, when to play them. You know, it's a real skill set, right? So at one time I was in New Jersey. I got to tell you this, Anthony. And what they do is they send you about 2 weeks before the wedding a list of the bridesmaids and the ushers and the best man, so you can introduce them. So when they come out to greet everyone, right? Yeah. And I remember this one wedding, we got down to the end, and I said, and now Uncle Joe Marino and Gladys Perkins. And there was a hush of a silence. And somebody come running up to me and say, yeah, Uncle Joe died last week. But they had forgotten.
Oh, no.
They had forgotten to tell me. So, you know, and I have others. I can write a book just about the wedding scene.
Really? And you know, it's so funny because, I mean, it was quite popular when Adam Sandler did the Wedding Singer movie, and I think a lot of people really jumped on that. And
hilarious. You know, a lot of things could happen that are funny, you know, but there's a lot of pressure at the same time, you know.
I would imagine with, you know, families, there's so many weird things about families. Families are like the weirdest people because you can't pick them, right? So there's always these kind of little feuds or things that are going on in the background. And I imagine you've probably seen so many of those from these weddings.
Cool. I've seen, that's why I said I can write a book about it. Yeah, and I've done weddings, you know, small weddings up to 2,000 people.
Oh, wow.
So I've done it all. And it was hard work. You know?
Yeah, I did.
Glad I did it, and I'm glad I got out of it.
Well, and look, you've done so much since then.
Well, since then, once I left the wedding business or the music business, I went right into broadcasting. I've been doing that now 25 years.
Wow, and that's I mean that's a benchmark on its own. I mean, you've done so many things before that, and then to do so many years of the broadcasting industry and the people that you've come across, you know.
Yeah, right. I've had many lives, and sometimes when I think back, for instance, when the pandemic hit, I have had the same photographer set for 20 years. So one day I said,
Oh, wow.
his name is Robert. I said, Robert, how many photos do you think you've taken over the 20 years around in and around the set? He said, I have no idea, but I'll let you know tonight when I check the computer. And he called me that night and he said, Mickey, I have 14,562 photos.
Wow.
I was blown away. So he sent them, you know, I finally got them. And I'm thumbing through them, and I had forgotten a lot of this stuff, you know? And it was like reading all of these phenomenal celebrities and meeting them before and after and having coffee with them and talking with them. And everyone has a story. So
that's the most amazing thing out of all of them.
Excuse me?
I said that's the most amazing part, right? Because you like everybody has the story. The amount of stories you've heard over 25 years.
Incredible. And that's why I did the book. That was one of the inspirations. Interestingly, not all the stories are from the interview. There are things that happen before and things that happen after the interview. Can I share one with you?
Oh, please do.
I'll give you your choice. Joe Montana, the football quarterback, or Eli Wallach, the actor from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Which story would you prefer hearing?
I'm going to have to go with Good, Bad, and the Ugly because I'm just an old Western fan.
Yep, he was the greatest. Eli Wallach. What? Oh, I had him on the show when he was 95, I think. Sharp as a tack. He was at the same time doing the last Wall Street movie. He was the rich guy. Anyway, after the interview was over, he said, Mickey, take a walk with me. So I think it was a June afternoon. And here I am walking up Broadway with Eli Wallach. That's a good day.
Wow.
But he's carrying this like bag from the grocery store, plastic bag. And I said, Mr. Wallach, what are you carrying in the bag? He said, an old pair of shoes. And I said, what are you going to do with those? You're going to give them away? What are you going to do with them? He said, I'm going to the cobbler to get them fixed. And I almost fell over. I said, Mr. Wallach, you know, he's like 95 years old. I said, why don't you go to Macy's? Yeah. I have a new pair. And he grabbed me by the wrist and he stopped me in mid-stride, looked me straight in the eye, and he said, Mickey, I got to tell you, I grew up during the Depression. He said, back then, we didn't buy new. We always fixed old, and I've never been able to shake it.
You know, but I feel like because we're such a throwaway, disposable society, I mean, people need to adopt that that mentality again. You know, there's still so many things out there with so much life left in them.
Yeah, here's a guy who was a millionaire and 95 years old, and he would prefer fixing an old pair of shoes than going and buying a new pair because it was so ingrained in him that you didn't throw anything away back when he was growing up.
Yeah, you know, I mean, of course, my family and I, we really tried to keep things as long as possible, especially when it came to a really good pair of shoes. You know, my dad would always hit up with the hot glue gun or something to keep that sole up and everything. But, you know, I can kind of understand for him because a good pair of shoes is a good pair of shoes. You know, like once you got them just the way you like them, it's so hard to just throw them aside.
Can I share my Joe Montana story with you?
Of course, yeah.
I love this one. But this happened before the interview, not after the interview. Joe Montana, 4-time Super Bowl MVP, right? We set up the interview. We had to do it in his hotel room in New Jersey. He was there for a memorabilia signing. And his manager said, Mickey, show up at 4:30. Joe will be here at 5:30. The people are letting you in his room, set up the lights, cameras, and 5:30 interview with Joe Montana. So we get there 4:15. We set up all the equipment, and they put out a nice spread, cold cuts, ham, Swiss, roast beef, potato salad. And I said, man, what a classy operation, So myself and my crew had a little lunch, and then we're still waiting around for Joe to show up. 5:30 on the dot, Joe comes through the door. The great Joe Montana. As soon as he does, I see his manager looking for me, and he's looking. He said, Mickey, well, let me stay over here. He's giving me the finger, come in the corner with him. I thought he was going to tell me questions not to ask,
Mm-hmm.
He looks me right in the eye and he said, who ate Joe's lunch? How's that?
Oh, that's amazing. It was so funny because when you're in that, I was thinking, I wonder.
It never dawned on us. We thought, that was nice of them to do this for us. So 2 things, So I don't even remember the interview with Joe Montana. All I remember is starting the interview saying, Joe, I got to apologize for eating your lunch. We thought it was for us. And he was laughing, and he said, Mickey, I would never eat that garbage. I'm going out to an Italian restaurant when this interview is over. But one thing I learned at that interview is never assume anything.
It's really funny that you don't remember the interview, but you remember there was potato salad.
I will never forget the food and what happened prior to the interview. I was so embarrassed. It was like you got your hand caught in a cookie jar,
That's just amazing.
At that. Yeah, I remember the spread. I don't remember the interview. I guess it shook me up,
Yeah, no doubt. The last thing you want to do is it's because it's your first impression, right? And you just think it's a good thing he didn't like that kind of food. That he was very I'm going to go to the restaurant though.
Right, but he didn't hold it against me because I saw him the next day at the memorabilia thing. I apologized a second time there, and he gave me an autographed football. So I guess he didn't have any hard feelings.
No, that's great. So, when, it's so funny because that when you said all this food was put out and everything, who would have thought that they would put out so much food for one person?
Yeah, exactly. He couldn't eat that. That was a meal for like 10 people, but that's what they do. He's the great Joe Montana. So that whatever it was, they put out a tremendous spread and he pick and choose whatever he wanted,
Wow.
I guess that's how
just imagine.
Get treated.
Yes, of course, right? And it's true. I guess when you've got someone come through, you want to put out everything possible to make sure that he's going to have something that he really wants.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, that is one of the funniest stories. I've heard in quite some time. So
I choose that day. It was petrified.
Yeah, I could only imagine, especially if that gets back, right? And then your boss is just like, "What did you do?"
I'll never forget it.
That's really cool. So, of all your guests, have you would you say that's one of the worst mistakes you've made with someone?
Oh, I think so. I probably made many more, but that's right on top of the list, no question about it.
Yeah, no. I can only imagine.
The only other time I gotta tell you this one, which there was a mix-up. I had Mayim Bialik on the program. She's on Big Bang Theory, and she was also Blossom back in the 80s.
Yes, yeah.
And normally, people come to the set camera ready, unless you tell them ahead of time, we have makeup, or they request makeup, they request hair, and so that you don't have a problem,
Yeah.
So in this case, somewhere along the lines, she had requested hair and makeup prior to the interview. Somehow that got lost in translation somewhere along the way, right?
Oh, no.
And I don't know. I don't even remember if it was her people's fault, my people's fault, but she walked in like she just got out of the shower. And it was like stringy, and it was like she just got out of the shower and the hair wasn't even combed yet. And so, well, where's the hair and makeup, you know? And we didn't have any because there was a mix-up. And she actually did the interview looking like that.
If anything, the lesson learned there was always have a complimentary hat.
Yeah, or something. So that was, you know, somebody, and I think it might have been on their part, you know. I remember a lot of times communication can create issues if you don't, you're not on top of it. I remember one time I was so looking forward to having Bonnie Tyler on the show. You know, she's from Wales. The singer had a number of major hits, but I call in the office the day before the interview from her and her manager at the studio, and I said, "No, you have the wrong day. The interview is tomorrow." They thought it was the day before, and it turns out the reason was because she's from Wales. They got the dates mixed up because of the time difference.
Oh yeah, because it's about 8 hours different, right?
So I mean, you know, you really got to be on top of this, every little detail, or I ended up losing it. We couldn't do it the day it was available for us that day, not the next day, and I never was able to get her back.
Yeah, well, and people remember that as well, right? You're just thinking, oh, well, if they couldn't be organized to be at that right time of day, then
right. But it was their
fault. Why would I go back?
They apologized, but we lost the interview. You know, unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't know how this happened today, but I don't know if you noticed from the first link for the show that I sent you, the time was 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And because that's normally when we record our show. So, of course, Matt and I were on earlier today, and we're thinking, oh, that's weird. Mickey didn't show up. That's okay. I'm sure he had a reason. And then I looked at the calendar when the show was done, and I realized it was me. I had to book for 7.
See? You know, and all I know is what the publicist tells me, right?
Yeah.
But I asked them, are you sure that it's Eastern time, 7 o'clock Eastern time? You know, if they're in Ohio, it's an hour earlier. Or if they're in California, 3 hours earlier. So you got to be on top of all of that.
And that's really funny because you know, when we always record at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and to some people they're like, oh, you know, I'm just getting home, I'm getting my kids ready, so it can be problematic. But when we have our guests from California, they're like, oh, this is fantastic. It's right in the middle of the day.
Right. Yeah. I was watching the other night. Who was I watching? Jimmy Kimmel, and he was interviewing Hugh Grant in Turkey. And
wow!
You know, so I guess in New York it was 11:30 at night, and he asked you, "What time is it in Turkey?" It was 4 a.m.
Oh, jeepers!
So you know, time is different in different places.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of actors, they're used to that weird time difference, right? They're used to getting up at just in the middle of the night to have to do things because of being on tour and stuff.
Yeah, fine. He had no problem with it.
Yeah, good. That's interesting. So,
Yeah.
And it's so funny actually. I just saw something with Hugh Grant the other day. It was a very interesting character for him because he was, I think he was playing like a bit of a low life reporter or something, and he just did not look like him. It was so weird to see him like that.
He's getting old. He's getting, right? I mean,
he is. Yeah, but you know, like he's always had this air of just being like a class act in all his movies. So even just playing this different role was so different. Not only just seeing him also at the age, but then a completely different role for him. So it's very interesting.
I like him very much. Yeah, one of my favorites actually.
So
yes.
So for all of the guests, and I know this is probably one of the hardest questions someone's going to give you, but who has been your favorite person to interview?
That, you know, that's a very hard one because, you know, even in the book, I have like a top 10, but if I had to name the number, it's hard. You know, I have a lot of favorites, you know, such as I really liked George Foreman, the boxer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all I wanted to talk about was the Rumble in the Jungle with Muhammad Ali, and all he wanted to talk about was the George Foreman grill. You know? Said to me, so he kept stopping. He said, he tried to give me business lessons throughout the interview. He said, Mickey, let me tell you something. A good business deal isn't a good one unless both parties are happy. And I thought about it. Right. You know, most people want to always have the upper hand, you know. He likes to go into business 50-50. I said, that's very, very smart. You know, Smokey Robinson, the singer-songwriter from Motown, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Right up there at the very top is Tony Orlando. Are you familiar with him? Tony Orlando and Dawn had his own TV series back in the day. But these guys were, you know, they become friends, you know. Stacy Keach, the actor, Dr. Maya Angelou, who was America's greatest poet. When I had her on the show, kept feeling like I was on Wayne's World, saying, I'm not worthy, you know, with her. She was very kind, and she allowed me to somehow survive. Dick Kaplan had on the show. I love Dick. To me, he was the prototype of what a talk show host should be, you know, and that is to somehow conduct intelligent conversation. So I would say, and of course, Joan Rivers was one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, I mean, all just amazing casts. I know exactly how you feel with Tia Carrera. It'd be the same.
Tia Carrera, she was obviously beautiful. She was charming, and she had just come off of doing Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, but I kind of sensed during the interview with her that she always felt, I think she felt like she should have been even bigger than she was.
Oh, she did so many things. I understand at that time, you know, like her career was still kind of on the upswing. I mean, Rain's World was what catapulted her.
I felt that way, you know, and then she's starting to get a little bit older, so the roles that she's having are changing. And, you know, as an actor, the man doesn't care, but the actress, they always want to be young, beautiful, and play that kind of a role. You know, it's not an easy transition. A beauty like her to now as she's going midlife kind of thing, you know. But I loved her interview. Don't get me wrong, and she was still beautiful, by the way.
Yes, of course. Yeah, no, I don't think that ever changes.
I just had Misty Copeland on. I liked her very much. I mean, she's such a role model for, you know, millions of other girls who are African American and hope to get into in show business in some form or another. And I had Deepak Chopra on recently, and you know, again, you know, just I feel honored that I had the opportunity to have them on the show. Do you remember the Gong Show? There was a show in. I had Chuck Barris on the show. He passed away.
Okay.
But the last question I've asked all of my guests for 20 years has, at the end, I always ask them, what do you hope your legacy will be? Good, you know, and it worked out really well because we went back into, you know, the tapes, and that's the last chapter in the book. We took out all the answers to the question, we put them in the book. But some are funny, some profound. You never know what you're going to get. So Chuck was a funny guy, but also a prolific author. So I said, Chuck, what do you hope your legacy will be? Without hesitation, he said, I want it written on my tombstone, gonged at last.
That's amazing.
Passed away about 6 years ago. And I saw his obituary in the New York Times. And what do you think's on his tombstone? Gonged at last. So he got his wish. He got his wish.
That's amazing, you know, and just again to hold that sense of humor right to the end, just amazing.
Yes, it's on his tombstone. But I liked him very. He was really a cool guy.
Yeah, that's amazing, and again, like the stories to have with all these people to have shared moments in your life, and like you said, you've made great friendships with them.
and luck is, like you say, to have the opportunity to sit down with all of these people and share a day kind of thing with them. It's so special. Even with Chuck Barris, he even shared with us. You had asked me at the beginning, how did you originally get in to broadcasting? What was your big break kind of thing? Well, he was the same way. He was trying to figure how can he get into television, and he didn't have a clue. He said, but somebody told him the way to do it is to be an NBC page. And each year they hire like 7 or 8 pages, and they basically become golfers at NBC Studios in Rockefeller Center. But you make connections and you move on like I did at Fox. Same thing. But he said to me, Mickey, to get in, they only hire 7 pages a year. How am I? And I'm a little 5'0" guy. I don't have any connections. How am I going to get in there? He said, so he had a brainstorm. So he went to the library. He found out, he looked up who was on the board of directors for NBC. And there was like 7 or 8 of them. And he used them as his references. He said he didn't know any of them, right? And they didn't know him.
Yeah.
He said, but Mickey, they never checked. And he got in. He became one of the pages. Boom, he knew all these big shots at NBC. Let's give the kid a break,
Wow, that's really ballsy too.
Yes, and within like 5 years from that day, he became head of daytime programming for, I think it was NBC or ABC in LA. And he created Newlywed Game, The Dating Game, and The Gong Show. All that he put down the executives at NBC that he didn't even know.
So there's a lot of information that you just mentioned that I think is actually quite important, especially for a lot of younger audience of our younger audiences listening, because with the way things are in with the economy and how a lot of people are kind of going back to school and they're retraining. I had done that myself at one point, and I was very interested to get into see the younger generation and their thought process behind things, and they didn't think of those things. They weren't thinking, taking the risky move, or they weren't thinking about, doing that research. Even just like you said, he went out and he researched all these things. A lot of people won't even do that nowadays, and that's a big difference.
Right, because you have to think out of the box, and I write about that in my book. You have to do whatever it is you can think about to get your foot in the door of where you want to go. The door isn't going to, burst wide open for you. You got to figure out a way within to get in, and then work your way from within to do what you really want to do. Right? I didn't want to be a salesman. I wanted to be a host of a show. I wanted to be a reporter. I wanted to be a writer. But I knew you don't start out that way. You start out at the bottom. Even George Foreman said, he had retired from boxing. And then when he came back a second time, he said, I didn't go looking for fights with Muhammad Ali. He said, I started at the very bottom and fought everyone below and worked my way back up again. So, but today's, like you mentioned, Anthony, today's generation, they're very much looking for instant gratification.
Yes. And I don't know if that is because we live in a generation where everybody gets participation medals or what it is. But, you're right. I mean, and I don't want to say it's even a sense of privilege, but people believe, especially the young kids that I had gone to school with, they had believed that they will enter the job market at a high standing because they've done this education, where it's like, no, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business. You still sometimes have to start right at the bottom.
Yes, and you have to really be creative to get into where you want to be. It's not, and I think a lot of it has to do with the parents. It starts there.
It's true, yeah.
Prior to getting into broadcasting, I was a teacher for a number of years. And I live on Staten Island. I was teaching high school on Staten Island and coaching a little bit. And I could tell you, the kids coming to school had better cars than I had.
Wow.
And I used to say to them, well, they're not working around. I said, well, they're driving Lexuses to school. And I said, where did you, is that your parents' car? No. My parents got it for me. And I said, well, how do you pay for insurance? How do you pay for that? How do you pay for gas? You're not working. Yeah, well, my parents, they give me a credit card. So what are the kids learning? They didn't have to do anything for this. It was all given to them. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's the way it is today. So when now they go into the job market, they don't want to start at them. Hey, I remember somebody saying to me, which I had an old station wagon I used to use for the band. And I have a daughter who was turning like 17, and she wanted a car. And I said to her, take my station wagon. I'm going to get a new one. And she started laughing. I wouldn't be caught dead in that thing. But when I was her age, I would have been doing backflips that I had wheels. Right?
Exactly. I would have driven anything. Like if it had solid wheels and doors on it, I would have driven it.
And then she said, if my friends saw me, and they would be hysterical if they saw me driving that car. So in a way, I guess we were creating monsters as well. She expected us to go out and buy her a new fancy schmancy car because she was 17 years old.
Mm-hmm. It's a very tough line between love and lessons when you're raising your children, right? I mean, you essentially love them so much you want to be able to give them all the opportunities you don't have. However, in doing so, you essentially or potentially make the monster that they will never exceed or excel beyond what was given to them, because that's what they've known.
That's right. And of course, because of the pandemic, that's certainly hasn't helped things, right? There's still kids that I know who are 30 years old. They're not kids anymore, still living in their basement, the basement of their mother's house. And a lot of that is not their fault. The economy is such, it's hard. Their careers have been put on hold. They still have big college loans that you discussed at the top. So it's not they want to be there, but it's unfortunate that we're in tough times right now. Yeah.
It's a different time, right? I mean, things are different. We do have to kind of roll with things as much as possible. But I don't believe that. I mean, I worked for McDonald's, one of my first jobs, and I actually look back and I look at all the things that I learned and some of the strengths that I gained from that, and I feel like my kids should do fast food or something as well when they grow up.
Right. You're learning people skills, work ethic. You're learning, and you're learning the value of a dollar.
Yeah. A lot of the things that are missing nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah. So I got a few a little question. I know we've gone a little bit over what I would normally do, but I've got questions. I have some questions I want to ask for you, and these are just things to get people know you a little bit better. We normally call these our slightly slower than average rapid fire questions. So sometimes if you see something and it goes off on a little tangent or a story that is totally good with us, and if not, you just kind of come up with the first thing that comes to your mind.
Sure.
Okay. The first one is, what made-up word would you register into the English language?
A made-up word?
Yeah.
That was, what did she do the other day? She called it, you stumped me. You stumped me. But I
Question number one.
I don't know. A word would, I guess, die hard, but that's not, I don't know if that's a real word. I guess it is, right? Is it 2 words or 1 word?
I don't know if anybody's ever thought of it as 1 word. I know it definitely is 2.
I'm going to make it 1 word. Die hard. Never give up.
Yep, that works for me. All right.
But you stumped me. That was a good question.
All right. Let's grab question number 2 here is, what is the scariest dream you've ever had?
My scariest?
Yeah.
I think the scare, and it's like almost like a recurring dream.
Mhm.
where I go back in time and I'm dreaming that I'm failing all my classes and then I'm going to fail out of college. And I'm scattering around to see if I can't salvage the situation.
Mhm.
And I wake up and I'm in a cold sweat.
I've had something very similar to that.
Yeah.
It's very weird because it goes back to the days when I was a kid and I was working at McDonald's, and I cannot today figure out how to use that cash register, even though the technology has moved on and I use things so much more complex.
You know, how could have I not gone to that math class? I cut it like 20 times. What's wrong with me? You know, and I would never do that, you know, and I'm really frightened that I'm going to be thrown out of school.
Yeah.
That's scary for me.
All right.
Yeah.
What superpower, if you could have one, would you wish you could have?
Invisible. That way
I find it very interesting, the people who are in television and in music industry, and they choose invisibility.
Yeah, I've been invisible a couple of times in that people on the show have been mic'd and then they left the premises and they were still mic'd. And conversations, remarks about the interview, about other people, and in a way you're invisible there, right? And I love it because you get to hear things that you're not supposed to.
Tell me how you really think.
Yeah. We had this one time, Pat Cooper, you know, Pat Cooper, the comedian. Yeah, we had him on the show, and then we at the time we were close to the Staten Island ferry, and he still had the mic on when he was getting on the ferry. We could hear him talking to the people, you know.
That's really good range on that mic.
Yeah, you know. And one time we were doing a TV commercial for someone, and it was like a plastic surgeon doctor, and he was mic'd. He was in the back room talking to his secretary. You know, I don't have time for that. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is a pain in the ass, and this, like, that was his attitude. And I'm saying that's terrible. You know that he should have that attitude. And he didn't know people listening to him. You know, you got to be very careful. You know, you have to assume. Me, I always assume I'm mic'd.
That's a good point. Yeah, you always feel like the mics are hot.
Right.
So the next question I have for you is, what is your earliest childhood memory?
Wow, my earliest childhood memory, and I don't know how far back you go, but I remember like being in my crib, like playing basketball. There was I don't know what, I must have little balls, try to throw them in a hoop on the side of the crib. And I was 2, you know, but I do remember playing in my crib and thinking like a 40-year-old, even though I was 2.
A natural athlete, even right back then.
Yeah, and then I remember sitting in the crib saying, you know, when am I going to get fed? I'm thinking all this, you know. I wonder if I'm going to get to watch TV tonight. I wonder if my mother's going to give me a bath tonight, you know. And I remember all these thoughts in that crib. And as I said, I may have been 2. That was it.
Wow, that's amazing to even retain all that.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's very vivid. Very vivid.
Yeah, thanks to television, I can't remember what happened 5 minutes ago. So
yeah,
that's really good.
2 years old, but I remember it very, very vividly, like you say. It's very unusual, I think.
Yeah, for sure. The next question I have is, what makes you happiest?
I think what makes me happiest is being able to do what I love. It's not about money.
That's an excellent thing.
It's not about money. It's about feeling a sense of gratitude of having the opportunity to do what I do, and then actually being able to do it, and the joy that I get that comes back to me is overwhelming. So
I know exactly how you feel. It's fantastic.
Doing what I love, that I have a passion.
Yeah, that's good. What foreign language would you like to learn?
Well, I tried to learn in high school Italian and Spanish. I really need to know Spanish because most of the world speaks it. But
Yeah.
I only got to be able to count. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete. I didn't get past the counting part. And the reason was I grew up, listen to this, Tony, you're going to love this, Anthony. I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. I might have been the only non-Italian in it. So in my high school class, there was big Italian population in it. So when we signed up for Italian, most of the Italian kids knew it already. So the teacher right past us Irish, German guys, blew right past us. We were trying to still get the uno, dos, tres, cuatro thing down. And they were having conversations with these other kids, you know, what do you have for dinner tonight? What are you going to do this weekend? And we were left in the dust. So I never really got to learn the languages like I was hoping I would.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it's so funny because nowadays they would just bell curve that.
Yeah. And you know, I at one time, we have a TV syndicator who sells our show, and they sold a group of our shows in Japan to the television English speaking network, and that's how they learn English. So Profiles was on there so they can help learn English somehow. Now, when I knew that, I now listen to a Spanish radio station in New York.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't work. I listen to it every day, and I still don't know a word. You know, I know 2 or 3 words, you know, but it's I can't pick it up by listening to a radio station like they can pick it up coming here to America and watching TV. I don't know what.
You know, one of the reasons I would love to learn a foreign language, almost every foreign language, to be honest, is because I have this innate fear of never finding the bathroom when I need it. So
I don't know. It's a real skill set. I can't figure it out, but I'll never learn watching TV or listening to the radio. They do. They do. They come here from, let's say, Mexico, and all they know is Spanish. Within 6 months, they're speaking English.
It's very interesting that we're the one, so English-speaking people do not learn languages as easy as anybody who is native language is something foreign. So the most world is speaks English, right? I mean, everybody has to learn it because that seems to be like one of those things that it's universal. Right. But I find it very interesting that we don't. I mean, it's not really forced.
I don't know why that is, but it's certainly a skill set that I don't have. You know?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, if anything, I'm going to attempt to learn where is the bathroom in every language. So, I mean, at least I'll be covered there.
Yeah, I think it's how you learn it and who's teaching it to you. And like you start out slow like that. And that's the reason I wasn't able to learn was when I was in high school, they moved too quickly because all the kids knew Italian in the class. So they didn't go slow for people like me. So we just got bored and, you know, never picked it up.
Yeah. You know, I struggled with math my whole life, and I was always told that you just don't get it. You don't know math. You're not going to know it. And then when I got to college, I had a math professor, and you had to know, it was the one thing that you had to do was a basic math. And he started talking exactly the way the teachers did in high school. And I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be horrible. And the moment he was done, he says, oh, wait a second. I think we can do this another way. And then he showed you that there is no one way to do math as long as you can show it. And it's like my brain exploded and all the information flowed in, and I suddenly understood everything about math.
Wow, that's a great story. And, you know, how it's presented to you. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
He was also one of very few men who can draw a perfect circle using, like, with nothing but his hand.
Another skill set. That's great. Yeah. Well, you got it. Good. Congratulations on your end. Wow.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it didn't look like.
I kind of look back and think, man, I'd love to go back in time and possibly knock that teacher out, because I mean, who would know what my life could have been? I could have been like an astronaut or something.
Well, you need to be good at math to do that. Really good at math.
It's true. If you could go back to a decade, what decade would you like to do?
Well, I often think about that question, and I look back at my life, and I know this is going to sound strange, but every decade that I've been involved with has been phenomenal.
That's good. I wouldn't find that strange. I mean, that's like you're living a good life if you really love it.
I was an athlete, and it got me a scholar. I was playing in high school, college. I loved it. 70s, I was coaching and teaching in high school. In the 80s, I had the band and I was teaching. And the 90s, I was into broadcasting. And every one of them was phenomenal. And I often think, if I have to go back and duplicate this, I don't think I'd ever be able to come close.
Yeah, I mean, you just do everything the same because you'd really enjoyed it.
Yeah, but luck has. I often say to people, better lucky than good. And somewhere along the way, you have to be lucky. Somebody has to give you that opportunity to be good. Yeah. And once you get the opportunity, you better be good or you're going to be out of there anyway. But you do have to be lucky to have the opportunity. So I've been I've got people have given me opportunities every step of the way. And I've run with the ball, but I've been lucky.
No, that's good. I mean, a little bit of luck takes people a long way. So
it does.
What was the first movie that made you cry?
The first what?
The first movie that made you cry.
Wow. This is going to sound strange, but it might have been Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, that's a good one.
I can't think at all or anything like that. I almost cried during Casablanca when the first time I saw that years ago. But that was, because of the romance involved. But when I saw Private Ryan, at the end of that movie, when he goes back to the cemetery to find Tom Hanks' character, and he talks to him in the grave, and then he turns to his wife, and he says to his wife, "Have I been a good man?" Because he promised Tom Hanks when he was dying at the end of the movie that he would live his life to the fullest and be a good man. And that's what Tom Hanks whispered in his ear. Make the most of your life and be a good man. And when he was over that grave as an old man, he wanted confirmation from his wife that he was that. And that made me
very, very powerful scene.
Very powerful scene. Yeah.
No spoilers to anybody who has not seen the end of that movie yet.
Right. Well, if you haven't, watch it, and you'll thank Mickey and Tony later.
Exactly. So what gets on your nerves?
The pandemic.
Fair enough.
Not being able to do what I've been doing for so long, the way I was doing it, and having the inconvenience of it all. Having celebrities say to me, "Mickey, I'd love to come and be on your show, but I'm not coming to New York now."
Yeah, fair. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Stuff like that. The studio that we used in Times Square for many years is now closed temporarily until after the pandemic is over.
Yeah.
So I'm missing my home base. I was lucky enough that a fella, Soho Johnny Pasquale, I don't know if you have met him yet. He's like a living angel.
What an amazing man.
He's a living angel here in New York. And he was kind enough to let us set up a studio in one of his properties, which saved our bacon. Because once the time the studio closed, I was basically out in the street with my show. And he gave us a location to to build a studio and continue doing interviews.
Yeah, Soho Johnny is so amazing. Like we had him on the show a couple weeks ago. It's just an angel, like you said.
If he heard this, he would be embarrassed because he does things for people. He doesn't want the credit. He just do good things, and that is rare.
You don't find that anymore. It's true. We live in a society where there are a lot of people who do things because they're expecting something in exchange, or they're looking for the adoration of what they're doing, and so few people. And when I was talking with him, you really get that sense that he's truly one of those genuine gentlemen who truly wants to help people.
That's what he is. But anyway, he would be embarrassed if he sees this,
Yeah.
He doesn't want to break. He just wants to do good because it makes him feel good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. This is my favorite question. Do you believe in aliens?
Yes. And I'm a big Star Trek fan. Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Every night before I go to bed, I watch Star Trek Enterprise. One of my favorite.
Okay, excellent.
Captain Archer. How can you? DePaul. It's beautiful. I love it. My favorites. But yeah, I mean, how is it possible that we are the only beings in the universe? You almost have to be naive. It's such a monstrous. We're just a thimble in the universe. Until traffic proves they don't want to come here. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I make this joke all the time on the show and just say, aliens drive by Earth and they look at us and say, roll up the windows, kids.
They just had an incident yesterday in, I think it was Arizona with the United flight. Check that out on the news. I think it was Arizona, where an object came right over the plane and it looked like a UFO. And the captain said, I don't know what that was, but it wasn't anything I was familiar with. Yesterday it happened.
Wow, I'm going to have to look into that.
Yeah, look into it. A United Airlines flight. The FBI is looking into it,
Yeah. Really cool. Okay, now.
Where it in the.
Yeah. So this is one of the, this might stump you. This is one of the toughest questions I think a lot of people have. And it is, what is the last thing you did just for yourself?
Oh, that's easy for me. I go play golf.
Oh.
That's
okay, good.
My treat. I like to play golf once a week with my lifelong friends, and that's my treat.
That's excellent.
But when I play, the next day I'm sharper, I'm more alert, I'm more motivated, I'm more inspired because I gave myself something I love.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, I got a couple of questions left here, and one of them is, if you could remove a holiday from the calendar, which one would it be?
Well, I don't know if it would be removing a holiday, because I'm all for holidays. But what I would do, I'd make an amendment in there somehow, and that is not allowed to play Christmas music until after Thanksgiving.
That's a fantastic one. My biggest thing nowadays is you can't put winter clothing on sale in the summer.
That's a good one. Yeah, because my better half, she starts playing Christmas music after Labor Day. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. It's not crazy. Wait till at least after Thanksgiving. She's got, she can't, that would be it. I like all holidays. I make some amendments on them, though.
You know what? I think there's a lot of people who work in the malls that would love that amendment.
Yeah, not till after Thanksgiving, Slow down a little.
Yeah. My youngest child, she's 6 years old, and she is still singing Christmas carols randomly throughout the day.
Yeah, 6, yeah. You have one child?
I have two. I have a 12 that's going on 13 and a 6-year-old.
So you have your hands full.
I do. The days can be very, very long sometimes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So the two questions left now. What is the best thing you've ever eaten?
The best thing I've ever eaten? Wow. Wow. Oh, man. I'm going to say a couple of restaurants in Manhattan, and I wasn't a big fish fan prior to it, but I went to a couple of restaurants, and somebody said, try this. It's one of their best dishes. I had linguine with clam sauce from a restaurant in Manhattan, and that blew me away. But I would say, I've been to some great steakhouses in New York, and if you get a really top steak, there's nothing like it. They're hard to find, they're hard to get, but when you get one, you know, and you savor it.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up an Italian restaurant in Manhattan, because when I was in Manhattan, and this was a long time ago, it was the first time I had an Italian meal in a real Italian restaurant, and it was the best thing I think I'd ever had in my life up until probably recently. But it's always in my memory now when people say, "Oh, do you want to get like some Italian?" It will never compare to that first Italian meal.
I think I think the name of the restaurant that I was at was Carmine's. That's what it's called. There's two of them in Manhattan, one in Times Square and one a little bit further uptown. And they said, try the linguine with clam. And I'm telling you, I couldn't eat enough of it. I said, man, is this good?
It's funny because I've never remembered the name of the restaurant, but now that you said Carmine's, I believe it was Carmine's.
Yeah, well, it's a big restaurant. It's like a party atmosphere. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get back.
It was fantastic, and the view was great. Oh yeah, I think that's what it was. It was a beautiful, beautiful restaurant. It was so memorable.
Can't wait to go back.
Yeah.
When this is all over.
That's great.
I'm not big.
So anybody, of course, who's in the New York area, make sure you're going over to Carmine's when everything opens up.
We gave him a free commercial. Why not? Maybe he'll get
right.
a loaf of bread or something.
Garlic loaf. All right. And the last question I have for you is, what is your favorite podcast you've been on in the last 12 hours?
Well, it's definitely your show, Anthony.
Hey, right on. We'll take it. I love when there's no hesitation.
I mean, we talked for an hour and 20 minutes, and it was like 10-minute conversation. I enjoyed everything.
It truly does. And when you get great conversation, it's amazing how fast it goes by.
Yeah, you're a great host. You made me feel at ease, and you got me talking about things that I had forgotten about. So that's a good host, and you do a great job. And it was an honor being on your show. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And coming from you, that really means a lot for me. Now, before we go, I know we didn't even we touched base here and there, but you've got a couple books out. You, of course, have your show. I would love for you to be able to pitch it so that, of course, we can find our listeners can.
Let me see if I can get it up. There it is. It's called From the Projects, the Profiles, a memoir. This was about a year ago. And it's my life story from growing up in the housing projects in New York City to my celebrity interview show Profiles, which I mentioned been on for 20 years. And the second book is a coffee table book, and it's called Inside Celebrity Profiles, where we went through these 15,000 photos and picked the best of the best. And we tell little stories like we discussed on your show today, and we put those in the coffee table book. So Profiles and the coffee table book are both available at barnesandnoble.com, Amazon.com.
Perfect.
All you do is go to their site online and put in Mickey Burns, and both of my books will pop up.
Excellent. Well, they might pop out too. So.
And I'm also, if people want to get in touch with me, that would be wonderful, right? I'm on Facebook. All they have to do is put in Mickey Burns TV. On Instagram, Mickey Burns TV. Same with Twitter, Mickey Burns TV. I'm easy to find. And if somebody would like to watch some of our episodes, Anthony, they can go to YouTube and just put in Profiles with Mickey Burns. And there's a lot of episodes. Not the whole show, but most of the show posted on YouTube, but those are our classic episodes from, let's say, 10, 15 years ago. Our most current episodes, they can go to the network and just Google NYC Media Network. And when you get to their site, you hit television, scroll down, you see profiles, and you'll see like 10 of our most recent shows in their entirety.
Excellent. Well, you know, I've myself have gone back and I've watched a few of your classic episodes on YouTube. They are absolutely amazing. You know, as for your books, I highly recommend anybody picking up your book, because if just an example of this conversation that has gone by in an hour and 20 minutes and just some of the fun things that we have discussed together, I would imagine that either of those books will be fantastic page turners.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Thank you for having me on your show. It's been an honor, and continued success to you.
Thank you very much. And it has been our pleasure having you. I would love to circle back around with you at some point and have you back again. Again, for any of our listeners who are, of course, listening to this after the live showing, we will make sure that we, of course, put up Mickey's profile under our guest page, as well as all of his social media links and how you can get to his book. Excellent. Thank you very much, Mickey. You have yourself a wonderful evening.
Great show. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you again soon.